Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. I reported this morning on how the Ukrainians had struck a fuel train in Dzhankoi, and there's some more detail coming out about that, and I just wanted to set it in the context of a massive, I think, offensive against Russian railway logistics, although we must also note that the Russians are doing this to the Ukrainians as well. So let's first of all just remind ourselves about Dzhankoi, where that is and why this is so important. Dzhankoi is here in the north of Crimea. Now you can see on Andrew Perpetua's map, he has these yellow dotted lines for the railway. So it's both a railway hub, it's a junction. There are four sort of railway lines, if you like, coming into Dzhankoi. It is both a road logistics and a railway logistics hub. To hit a fuel train in Dzhankoi is going to have a serious effect on rail travel or rail logistics in and around Crimea. It will affect activities north into Zaporizhia, Kherson and Zaporizhia. Now, we have also heard that trains have been attacked in the Tokmak region, in this kind of area. In fact, if we start looking back over what's happened this year, we can go back to June, we can even go back to February, and I've got a bunch of information here to suggest that the Ukrainians have really been working on railway logistics inside Russia here around, so you've got all these different oblasts, you've got Volgograd, Rostov-on-Don, you've got Voronezh as well, but then you've got the occupied territories of Donetsk, and Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Okay, so I reported this morning that a fuel train had been hit near Dzhankoi. There was a report that a station had been hit, but I think it was a fuel train overnight. There was some claiming it was special forces that were involved in that somehow. I don't know whether that means that they were doing drones, missiles, or just setting mines off themselves, or what. They appear to be, special forces appear to have quite a lot at their beck and call with regard to weaponry. So sometimes you hear about special forces and it's just them using drones or even maybe missiles and whatnot. Okay, so this is a footage that is just coming out of the fuel on fire at Dzhankoi, and it looks really pretty significant, as you can see. Another bit of footage has just been released of someone driving here. Let's just put this.
Посмотрите, Света. Я такое еще не видела.
So it's really significant because you can see fire at a number of places along this road and the other side of the road as well. So, you know, there is something pretty serious has taken place in Dzhankoi. That's really good news. As mentioned, it is a rail hub. Then we heard last night as well, as I reported in my hits and losses video, that a substation is on fire in a traction substation, it causing train delays. That took place in Novovoronezh, and they even had to disconnect the reactor number 7 at the Novovoronezh nuclear power plant. I presume this traction substation was pretty close to that. In Zhuravka-Voronezh region, part of the Zhuravka-Milarovo rail line built to bypass Ukraine. Voronezh is a key hub on Russia's southeast railway, and that's the point. We are seeing railway after railway get hit by the Ukrainians. So that's Voronezh. Let me just let you know where Voronezh is. So if you have Ukraine here, Voronezh is this oblast. And you can see the yellow railway line comes all the way down here. So it feeds into here. You've got Rostov and then Krasnodar down here. Then the train lines go off through Donetsk here. And then you've got a line that comes down Berdyansk, Melitopol. That's a new line there. There is another line. I don't know. Is that definitely the train lines? Because there is another line that comes across here. And then you've got down into Dzhankoi there. So Voronezh is being hit. That was hit, a substation hit last night, but actually it's received other attention. Here's an Intel Schizo one from, when is this? June this year. Voronezh region, Russia. Railway track was blown up before a train passed. The FSB reports due to damage of the track. 21 passenger trains were delayed en route. Blah, blah, blah. So Voronezh is being targeted. Here, that's the substation there. Then just this week, remember, I reported on 2 trains getting hit around, and I got confused because I was looking at the videos and thinking, well, that doesn't show a fuel train, but actually there were 2 separate trains, I think, going in opposite directions. This is down in the kind of Tokmak direction, Melitopol, Tokmak. Oh, you do have other, I think, train lines going up here. I'm not sure. Volnovakha is a train line. Anyway, if we go onto Andrew Perpetua's map here, you've got Tokmak there, and you have, as you can see, this yellow dotted line is a train line. So you've got a train line going across over to there, and that Russian trailer destroyed. No, that's not it. So anyway, a couple of trains were taken out on somewhere around here, as you can see from this footage. So if you remember, that's what it looked like, and that was evidently part of a concerted effort to hit railway logistics. So a 30 tank car fuel train was attacked, upwards of nearly 600,000 gallons of fuel impacted, locomotive detached from the train and is leaving, and that's what you can see there. Separately, a second train was attacked yesterday as well. And so, this is just consistently happening. In total, Ukrainian forces are directly impacted. At least 2.5 million and 2.8 million gallons of fuel being transported by Russian rail so far this year, and indirectly impacted untold millions more from train delays, from attacks on rail infrastructure. And that's the imagery from the drone attack on that train, the fuel train there. So if we look at some of these maps that Intel Schizo has put together, you can see that there are these consistent attacks taking place on trains at the moment and railway logistics that will be having a huge impact on Russia's ability to prosecute the war, but also it will affect, no doubt, civilians' access to refined products too. Their gas stations are running low, their petrol stations are running low on fuel at the moment. So as you can see, here was one of the trains that was attacked, and it had these jammers on board because they recognize that they are now getting targeted by Ukrainian drones. But that didn't, I think it may have cut out the first drone, may not have cut out the second drone. And then of course you had this particular video of that's the one, actually, those are the jammers there. So that's the one, that's that second train that was attacked, that I got confused with this big fuel train there. Anyway, point being is that you look at these maps and from people like Intel Schizo, and you get an understanding that the Ukrainians are really putting in a concerted effort to take out Russian railway logistics. That's Molochansk. First incident of electronic warfare on a train for countermeasures there. But anyway, then when you go back in time, so this is now going to June, Russia's main supply lines into southern Ukraine, especially from Crimea and Berdyansk to Tokmak, have been repeatedly targeted and damaged by Ukrainian one-way attack drones, missiles, direct sabotage and FPV drones. As a result, the Tokmak, Melitopol, Tokmak, Berdyansk railway branches are becoming too unreliable to rely on due to high risk of attacks. To adapt, Russia is urgently activating an alternative route that shifts supply flows eastward, relying on Mariupol as a new logistics node. The degraded routes are highlighted with red lines. The new route will offload fuel by ship directly onto rail cars and will then be sent along the existing Mariupol-Volnovakha railway line. From Volnovakha, southern tip of the Tsar train will then go west to Volnovakha, from Volnovakha to Rozivka, which is now seen as more secure and less prone to attack due to less attacks in this area. The new route is highlighted with the green lines. The final leg of this route will go from Rozivka to Tokmak, which will be the riskiest part of this route, which has seen several attacks in the past, with 2 trains attacked and small rail bridge near Verkhny Tokmak attacked with glide bombs last year. The section is highlighted in orange. On paper, this new route will sound sound and makes sense, though in reality this near route will still have the same risks as the existing routes due to the distances of the rail line from the contact line. They're constantly similar between 15 and 38 miles from the LOC, the contact line, and the final leg of this route has to travel along the same stretch of line just east of Tokmak. That has seen repeated train attacks recently. That is 15 miles from the LOC. Okay, let's put all of that into a mapping sense. So they're coming up with alternate routes to try and get round this problem, including loading from the sea, getting that on the train further away from the front line, and then being able to access. So I guess, doing that instead of doing this, or doing this instead of doing that, or whatever. The problem is, at some point you have to get close enough where they get attacked. So here you've got the Zaporizhia reservoir as it was, and then the front line is looking something like that. So it goes across there. And this is all very close to the front line. Now, this used to be, Volnovakha over here, used to be very close to the front line at Vuhledar sort of area. That is now much further back from the front line due to the advances of the Russians. But still, with the distance that you can strike and with the types of drones that the Ukrainians are using, it is really difficult for the Russians, and they are struggling to be able to cope, which is why you're seeing trains now with massive electronic warfare pieces of kit on board, because this is definitely a problem for the Russians. Then when we look at what's happened recently, just slightly further to the east, this is war translated from just the other day, August the 10th, sort of 11 days ago. Ukrainian forces have conducted 12 precision strikes on Russian railway infrastructure in recent weeks, mainly in the south. These attacks have disrupted key junctions and slowed military cargo flows to Crimea, to Donbass and the North Caucasus, complicating Russian supply chains. Ukrainian analysts at Conflict Capital have reported this. So when we look at the railway here, let's just try and get you to understand where we are. So this is the Sea of Azov. This is a Kerch Bridge. You've got Crimea just going off there. You've got Melitopol. Here you've got Berdyansk going up there to, that's the railway line we were just talking about there, which is itself being attacked an awful lot. This is occupied Ukraine, Donetsk. You've got heavy railway activity just to the east of there, and that is being hit by the Ukrainians. So you've got a number of different attacks there, but then you come back into Rostov Oblast going up to Volgograd Oblast, and you have, there's Volgograd there, you have this line being attacked loads at the moment. And, I'm sure there are more attacks that we're not hearing about due to operational security. This is really, really significant. Analysts at the Conflict Capital note that Russian forces failed to achieve strategic gains this summer. Actually, no, it's just going, I thought that'd be talking more about the railway logistics. It wasn't. Apologies. Right, then we are going to go to August the 7th and look at another map that shows you pretty similar things. Ukraine strikes 2 more railway stations in Volgograd Oblast at the Surovikino railway station. I reported this at the time. And Maxim Gorky railway station. Video is taken from the Surovikino railway station on fire there. And here we can see those attacks taking place down this Volgograd railway line, across there going into Donetsk. And then, of course, all the stuff that takes place routinely in occupied territories of Ukraine, Donetsk, etc., etc. What else can we say? So this is now going back to April the 13th of this year. Just to give you an idea of how long this kind of project has been going on. And here we're talking about down into Krasnodar Oblast. So that's to the east of the Kerch Bridge and whatnot. We have on April the 12th, Ukrainian forces executed a long-range drone strike on Vasilyurinskaya railway station in Krasnodar region, temporarily halting rail traffic along an important ground line of communication used to transport Russian military equipment and materiel to occupy Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia regions. This marks the first known Ukrainian attack on this section of the Russian rail network. So back in April, they were starting to attack new places. In addition to disrupting rail movement, the strike likely affected several industrial support facilities located near the station, including a metal fabrication facility and a concrete production plant. These sites play a direct role in the Russian war effort by manufacturing and supplying materials essential for the construction, maintenance and repair of military infrastructure. So you hit rail lines. It's not just about military cargo, it's not just about fuel, but concrete, metal, all the stuff that you need to help prosecute the war from an industrial point of view, from a construction point of view, from a movement point of view in terms of fuel. Yeah, the strike has resulted in a high probability of immediate rail traffic disruption, effectively halting a critical supply route in southern Ukraine, etc., etc. So, strain on their military operations, and if these strikes persist, then it's bad for the Russians. And that's what it is. Here's another one. This is in August, so this is just 11 days ago. Now, why I wanted to end this video with this image is that you've got a whole bunch of stuff getting destroyed in Dnipropetrovsk here, and this shows you that the Russians are doing similarly. So the Ukrainians striking this railway line along here routinely. That's your Tokmak, Melitopol, on the way to Volnovakha. Then you've got Donetsk getting here, and then all to the east of this map, as mentioned, you've got Volgograd Oblast, Rostov Oblast, and then Krasnodar Oblast, and then you go up north, you got Voronezh. But inside Ukraine, inside the free territories of Ukraine, the Russians are doing this too. So Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhkivka, that kind of area. You've also got further inland going to Pavlohrad, Dnipro, Zaporizhia. The Russians are going to be hitting Ukrainian rail logistics. Now, I think for the first couple of years, neither side focused too much on rail logistics. I was wondering whether the Ukrainians weren't doing it because they started attacking Russian logistics, railway logistics too overtly. The Russians would do that to the Ukrainians, and that would hurt the Ukrainians. So maybe that was the reason. And the Russians won't do it to the Ukrainians, I think, because they wanted the rail logistics to be in place, because they had a sense that they were going to take Ukraine. And what's the point of destroying railway logistics, especially when Russia is a railway army, it's a railway nation, it relies so much on railway, that you destroy all the railway in unoccupied Ukraine, then when you eventually come to occupy it, you've got way more work to do, and you can't move stuff around easily. So maybe they kept their hands off that. But as soon as they've started realizing that actually our maximalist intentions for Ukraine aren't realistically going to be realized, the Russians have probably started attacking. This is massive speculation. I don't know if this is true, but my theory would look something like, oh, we're not going to take this now. Let's go to town on Ukrainian railway logistics. And the Ukrainians may be realizing that as well and just going to town on Russian railway logistics. And you're seeing a kind of tit for tat attack in the same way that Russians have really started going for energy infrastructure again, now that Russia has received so many hits on its hydrocarbons, oil refineries and gas pumping stations and whatnot. So there is a tit for tat element, but the Ukrainians, I think, can really do some damage to the Russians because they're so reliant on the rail network. The Ukrainians will be too, of course, to a large degree, in moving a lot of military equipment and resources to nearer the front line. But we are definitely seeing at the moment a huge focus by the Ukrainians on Russian railway logistics, and that is resulting in, just in the last week, an awful lot of trains being blown up. We're seeing substations. Those are electric kind of substations that provide electricity to the electric train lines. You're seeing stations get hit. You're seeing logistics in general get hit. And I would imagine next couple of weeks we're going to continue to see similar things to this. There's no reason not to think that. Anyway, that's enough from me. I just thought I would give you a little bit of a railway update. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.